So I will kick us off. All of us are members of GW Field Park Initiative, which is a collaboration between a handful of municipal, nonprofit, regional partners, and other associate groups who participate within the initiative. And this has been a project that came from a park master plan that we'll get into the details of, and so far has moved on to implementation of those goals. And through that, we are working on gathering funding, which we'll talk about today, and how those projects are shaping out and get feedback from all of you on design and concept. On our agenda, I'll continue to go over the DW Field Park Initiative. Rachel will give an update on the master plan. Scott is here from Fuss and O'Neill, and we'll talk about the parkway concepts. And from there, I will open up the chat and discussion to everybody to provide feedback. We can scroll back up through the slides, talk about individual images. And then following that, Scott will discuss the MEPA filing process and how that applies to these projects. And then we'll have any closing discussion. So most of you are probably here because you've been to DW Field Park and you enjoy being there. The park is in both Brockton and Avon and houses 7 different bodies of water. And our role on the initiative is to continue to support it and increase the accessibility, recreation opportunities, environmental health, and climate resiliency. Since 2022, we have been able to get nearly $5 million invested in or committed to initiatives and projects. And for our initiative partners, we have Wildlands Trust, a nonprofit land conservation trust, the City of Brockton, and we are specifically working with Tim, the Department of Parks and Recreation. And we have the town of Avon and their planning department heavily involved in the project as we're between both communities. I am from Old Colony Planning Council, and we're the regional planning agency for both of those. And other key contributors that have participated and helped grow this project are the DW Field Park Association, Manomet Conservation Sciences, Fuss and O'Neill, Apex, formerly Environmental Partners, the Conway School, and the Fuller Craft Museum. And I'll turn it over to Rachel for the master plan progress update.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Is there more on the slideshow? Here we go. All right, so from 2022 to 2024, we undertook a major master planning process. We started with a public community survey that went out, and we had over 1,400 participants respond to that back in 2022. And that really showed us not only how folks were using the park currently, but also how folks would like to use the park in the future and what kinds of projects were the highest priorities for the community for us to focus on. So we used that community survey as a guiding light, and then we did a lot of other community input throughout the process as well. We worked with Apex to put together the full master plan, which is available on our website, dwfieldparkinitiative.org or dwfpi.org. But if you don't want to read it, it's 125 pages. I think it's a great read. But we have a kind of distilled down version of it for you tonight. We have identified 3 goals, and that is to improve environmental resilience, upgrade user experience, and expand community opportunities. So all of the projects that we put forward fall under at least one, but usually 2 or sometimes all 3 of these goals. We were able to identify 13 key projects to move forward with, and we didn't put them in any order of priority because we wanted to be able to pursue funding opportunities as they arose. And we're going to be talking about 2 of these projects tonight. So site-specific projects included the DW Field Parkway, which we will talk about extensively tonight, the Oak Street parking area, the main parking lot, The Waldo Lake footpath, which we'll talk about tonight, the Hill parking area, which is the large parking area just beyond the tower, the Waldo Point Nature Trail, the Waldo Lake Observation Area, which a lot of folks call the duck feeding area, just that parking area and kind of community spot along the western shore of Waldo Lake, the Waldo Lake waterfall at the southern terminus of Waldo Lake, and then some park-wide goals. So, sorry, let me back up. For those site-specific projects, we are recommending continued design and construction for all of those sites. And we have some concept designs from the Conway School for each of those sites as well that kind of illustrate some of the potentials for those areas. For park-wide goals, we have the replacement of public safety infrastructure, such as the gates on the parkway, the implementation of the waste management plan, which is an appendix of the master plan, the creation of a water quality monitoring program, the expanded access to restroom facilities, standardized signage throughout the park, and expanding the trail system. So just some updates. We were able to expand some of the nature trail system pretty significantly in partnership with the town of Avon. We were able to open a 30-acre fieldstone preserve, which abuts the park and is accessible through the Waldo Lake observation area. So you can park there and hike for a mile in the woods. If you go, you will see a big kiosk and it has a great map and you can take a hike there. So it's nice to be able to offer folks a little bit of a hiking opportunity outside of the paved systems inside the park. And then we have received funding. Do I have a slide for funding that we're working on right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've received the funding that we are working under right now. So we have a grant called MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. That's just a map of the sites that I was talking about in the last slide. Here we go. This is largely funding what we're here to talk about tonight, the redesign of the parkway. It's $859,000 awarded to the city of Brockton and the town of Avon. And we are coming up to the end of that fiscal year, so the designs will be done in less than a month. These are going to be these will be permit ready designs. So Scott will talk more about that. We also have a park grant, which is parkland acquisitions and renovations for communities. That's 425,000 awarded to the city of Brockton for design and construction of the Tower Hill parking area, which is really exciting. It means we're going to be able to break ground on a project by the end of this calendar year. So we'll touch on that a little bit tonight. And then OCPC was also able to acquire a SWIG grant, which is the SNEP Watershed Implementation Grant for $100,000, and that funding will support both of the projects under MVP and Park. So that's a little bit of an update on what we've been up to for the past couple of years. And now I'm going to turn it over to Scott from Fuss and O'Neill to show you the designs.
All right, thanks, Rachel. I'm going to give a broad overview of the project and just kind of show you what we're up to. As Rachel described, we are working towards producing plans and a permitting filing by June 15th. And we feel pretty good about that, about where we are. We like our concepts and I want to show you what they are. This slide here is basically the extent of the project. So the project that we are designing now really consists of improvements to the parkway from Oak Street up to Pond Street and all the way out to Harrison Boulevard and Avon. It also includes redesign of the Tower Hill parking lot, and we'll get into what these redesigns look like. Next slide. So right now, what's out there is a roughly a 24-foot wide cross section of road. It is, there's no real separation between vehicular traffic, automobiles, and pedestrians and bicycles, except for a yellow line that kind of runs through the center and some other striping indicating where bicycles and pedestrians should go. There's also no real stormwater infrastructure that's there. This was built before any kind of, or the parkway was built before any kind of water quality um, was even considered. So if you drive out there now, what you see some paved swales that basically discharge water directly into Upper Porter's Pond, the reservoir, Waldo Lake, and nothing's treated. So whatever falls off of your cars or your bikes will end up in one of those three ponds and will and contributes to the water quality issues that you see out there now. Every time I've gone out there, you see, you know, evidence of algae blooms and lily pads and those types of things. So part of the grant was, and really the intent of the grant is to provide a design that is going to add water quality using what we call green infrastructure or nature-based solutions. And so that is the desire to implement throughout the project. If you look at these different cross sections, type 1 shows effectively what we're trying to do throughout the project. And we're attaining that in roughly 2/3 of the site. It's to rebuild the parkway so that you have a 12-foot wide vehicular travel lane with a 4-foot gravel shoulder um, on the right-hand side as you're driving. On the left will be a water quality swale, which will collect stormwater generated by the road and also by a shared use path, which is on the other side. The shared use path is desired to be 10 feet wide. We don't always have that in every location due to constraints, whether they be slopes or steep slopes or wetlands. But this is really the area, this is really the cross section that we're looking for. The concept is that water that's generated, stormwater that's generated by the road and the shared use path goes into the swale. The vegetation that's in the swale cleans the water. We infiltrate it into the ground, and then the swale travels along the length of the road and discharges to other stormwater facilities, stormwater basins that are located throughout the park. And those provide additional water quality treatment, some infiltration where soils allow it, and then you discharge water into the ponds or into the lake, the reservoir, and the pond. Again, this is all done to clean the water and to make it, just make it cleaner and improve the health of the ponds. Now, in some cases, we have areas where we have wetlands on both sides of the parkway, and so we're limited. We still want to maintain the shared use path and the vehicular way, but we want to add some protection to the shared use path. So type 2 basically shows the shared use path raised up on a curb, and that provides protection for bike riders or cyclists and pedestrians. And then what we're doing there is we're incorporating what we call traditional gray infrastructure. So traditional catch basins that will collect water, treat it, again, routing stormwater to stormwater basins to clean the water, infiltrate it where appropriate before it's discharged. So even though this is not the desired technique for treating stormwater, it's definitely an improvement over what's there. And then in one area along Old Pond Street, where we're very, very limited, we're going to have to maintain basically the same cross section that we have, but we are adding stormwater structures to help clean the water. Next slide. And so this slide is basically a cross section of what the stormwater basins may look like. So, in order to design these, we have to understand what the soil conditions are, and we've done test holes out on the site to understand where groundwater is, how dense or sandy or rocky the test holes are, or the soils are in these areas. And based on contributory area or area that flows to them, and stormwater requirements, that's how we size these things. We're also having our landscape architects spend a lot of time understanding, what types of vegetation should be included with these designs. And so they're working hard to come up with a planting palette that will effectively disguise these basins. They're not going to be holes in the ground that are grass and just collect water. They're going to be planted so that as you're walking through, you don't really notice that they're stormwater facilities. They look more like landscape amenities. And so that is the intent, to kind of keep in aligned with the spirit of a park. Next slide. And so this is generally what it will look like. These are engineering drawings, and you can see the lines around the outline of the ponds. Those are wetland areas. The gray is what we call where the paved areas are. So it, either the shared use path or the vehicular way. This is on the east. This is on DW Field Parkway East, north of Tower Hill, and south of South Street. And you can see these greenish areas, these large, I want to say triangular type areas. Those are where we're working on designing stormwater basins. And that's what we're doing right now. So they're just placeholders now. That doesn't mean that that's what the size of these is going to be. We're working on those designs right now. But you can see between the vehicular path, which is on the bottom of the screen, and the shared use path, which is a little bit thinner. It's kind of hard to depict this on Zoom, but you can see a green strip between the two, and that's the swale that we're talking about. So the swales will be designed, or are being designed, to bring water into these stormwater basins, to treat the water, infiltrate it into the ground, and discharge it to the wetlands cleaner than what it was generated as. Next slide. This is the area of the Waldo Lake Observation Area. And so what we've done is we've shifted the parkway to the west a little bit to provide for additional work later on along the water's edge. Maintaining a similar amount of spaces, we believe, in this area, although parking out there is pretty informal, so it's hard to tell exactly how many spaces we have. We also have to the left of the parking area, we have a long, narrow green area that's an existing depression. And what we'll do is we'll bring stormwater that's collected by the swale into that depression, treat it, and then discharge it back into Waldo Lake. Next slide. Again, this is on the west side, and again, you can kind of see the approach. On the right-hand side is where the road is constricted by wetlands and different areas. So you can see kind of on the left-hand side, or the left middle, there's a bunch of like black lines. If you zoomed in, you would see that those are wetlands. And so there's a little bit of a stream and a wetland area that kind of discharges through there. So in that area, we have to narrow it down. We have to narrow down the cross section of the road. On the left, you can see the swale tapering, and then we go to the cross section where the road and the shared use path are together. One thing to note is that we've always located the shared use path on the side of the water, so that pedestrians and bicyclists are along the water's edge, and vehicles are on the outside. And then on the right-hand side of this, you can see another stormwater basin that we're working on designing as well. One of the things that we're working in now, which is kind of a nice feature, is that in some areas we're limited by elevation, so we're just going to have simply a planting strip between the two. So we don't have enough elevation between the elevation of the road and the wetlands to incorporate a swale and get water back to the pond, but it's just going to be a nice grass or nice planting strip between cars and pedestrians and bicycles. Next slide. And then this shows the area that is right at just north of Oak Street. It's kind of at the intersection where DW Field Parkway East and West diverge. The green area in the upper left it's actually an existing low spot. So what we're doing is we're utilizing that where we can and collecting water, discharging it to there, letting it again get treated, infiltrate into the ground, and then discharge across to Upper Porter's Pond. On the right-hand side, there are cross sections. Those are very similar to what I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. And then what we're doing is we're formalizing parking down near the Tower Hill, near the tower. So I don't know, Rhiannon, if you can zoom in a little bit down in that area. So we're just going to formalize parking there. Right now, there's some clearing areas and some gravel areas. But we're going to formalize that a little bit more. You can see that the swale in front of the tower, which is on the left-hand side of the screen, that goes away, mostly because it's a high point here and it's not really collecting a whole lot of water. And then you can see how the swale gets incorporated on the right-hand side as you go back down the hill. All right, next slide. And this is the East Parkway as it approaches South Street. We're constrained here by wetlands that are generally up near the South Street. South Street's on the right-hand side of the page and it runs north. It runs up and down as you're looking at this. But there are wetlands on both sides. So we need in this area we needed to squeeze the cross section together, eliminate the swale, and that's one of the areas where we're going to have a more traditional closed drainage system. If you look on the other side of South Street, you can see the swale that's on the, I guess, on the approach to South Street. So again, the desire is to have the swale in between the to separate the path, the shared use path and the vehicular path. Just not possible everywhere due to topography and wetlands. Next slide. Okay, and now I'm going to talk about the Tower Hill project. So due to the way the grant is funded, this needs to be built first and designed and built first. So this is a little bit ahead of the parkway. In fact, I was talking with the landscape architects just a couple hours ago about this, and what you'll notice is that there's a little bit of a reduction in parking spaces on this plan. Based on comments we received from the steering committee, we are adding another 10 spaces on the other side of DW Field Parkway to accommodate that loss. But the real goal here is to green it up, to provide a picnic area, which is in area number 10, provide a playground, which is in area number 6. Number 4, that green strip that kind of runs sort of diagonal, but up and down. That's another stormwater facility. So water from the parking lot will flow into it and get discharged into the ground, infiltrated into the ground. Again, just in improving the usability of it, making it more of a destination. Right now, there's not a lot there except to park. So hopefully with some picnic areas and some playgrounds, it will be used a little bit more. Next slide. And that's all I
So
have for now.
yeah, if anybody has questions, if you raise your hand, I can call on you. That way you can chat with us. And I already have one. I'll start there and then work on getting it so other people can participate. Jackie, you should be able to talk now.
Okay, so the area crossing into Avon at the well, we cross a road, and is that Brockton Reservoir? Yeah. Is there any work or thought process about that road crossing there? On a bicycle and or on foot? It's just very wonky. It's, you got to go up the hill um to cross the street.
Right.
I just didn't know if there was going to be any additional signage for the drivers or painting on the road or anything.
So I know that the project really goes to the approaches of South Street, and I know that the town of Avon is working with another consultant, Apex, on the intersections. I'm not sure if they're working on both intersections, Rick, or if they're working on um, just the one on the other side. But that's something that needs to be coordinated. As Rachel discussed, what we're doing now is we're providing a permit application in a it's a I don't want to say it's preliminary because it's more than preliminary um, to file with the state Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Um, the permit that we need to get is called well, we need to get a certificate um, from that office in order to proceed with the project. The way the process works is that you provide, again, you don't provide final plans, you provide plans that they can look at and comment, and you can receive comments. It's a the process is really a planning level process, so you don't want to go too far because you're gonna have to change things as you move through the process.
Okay.
The second half of the grant, so we have a certain amount of money that is set aside now to do these designs and file the permit application and get through the first phase of the permit application. We've applied for a second round of funding to do what we call construction level drawings um, and finish the permitting. When we do the construction level drawings, that's when we'll do more coordination about these types of details. But
Okay.
we understand that, you know, this is an area that needs work. And again, what you're seeing on this sheet is, again, better than concept, but not final. So these will definitely adjust based on the permitting process, based on comments that are received during the permitting process, and you can participate in that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And this is part of that process as well. So, we're taking comments and we're listening to what people tell us, and they're definitely altering the designs that we put together.
Thank you.
Sure.
Rick, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure, sure. If you're talking about South Street and the Parkway East, yes, the town of Avon has jurisdiction over South Street. And the town did just appropriate $60,000 for some funds toward that intersection. I think the first step is design work to design some, as you say, the crosswalks and bike crossings for bicycle traffic going north-south on the Parkway East, as well as pedestrian crossings. And then there's a lack of a sidewalk in front of the sort of waterfall coming out of Brockton Reservoir. and down into Waldo Lake. So we would like to try to improve that intersection, do some traffic calming, and improve the crossings and improve the sidewalk access in front of that waterfall. We don't have construction money at this point. I am also applying for a grant that would augment the resources for the effort.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else have questions? If you raise your hand, I should be able to call on you.
There's also a question in the chat I can read from Patricia, asking if the vegetation and the runoffs and meridians is going to be native plants.
Yes, absolutely.
Great question. Anything else while you have all the experts in one spot? So if you want to go back and reference these, we are going to get them on the DWFPI Park Initiative site. And there'll be a link to that on the last page, just so you know, before we move forward. So if you have additional feedback or comments you want to provide after this time, you can still do that. And then Scott's going to explain the MIPA filing process next and how those comments, you can comment specifically to that part of the project. And there will be continued opportunities. But last call on any questions about the design, the swells, the walkways, any of the pictures we've already looked at.
We got one more in the chat here from Lynn. Hi, Lynn. What is the projected timeline in finishing up the project?
So right now, that's really going to depend on funding. So everything that we're talking about is grant funded. The Tower Hill parking lot is ahead because of the type of grant that was received. So the plan there is to begin construction, well, to have plans done at the end of May, beginning of June. Project needs to be bid and built. So that should happen fairly soon. The Parkway is a much bigger project. As I said, we have we have a two-step process. We're getting the first piece. We're getting the first piece designed now, or we get the first piece of the grant this year, and that's what we're wrapping up. We've applied for the second piece, and hopeful to get that grant money. We don't have any guarantees. We are very optimistic. When we first submitted for this grant, we submitted for everything, the design, permitting, and construction level drawings. We were only funded half of it, but the understanding that perhaps we'll get the second half in the second year. If we get those in the second year, we wrap up the permitting, wrap up the construction level drawings, we can bid the project. And if we have, and if we get the money for construction, then possibly 2028. It just depends on when we get money.
All right, so we have some more questions in the chat here. Patricia asked, will there be a walkway created from the Oak Street parking lot to the right side of the roadway?
To the right side of the roadway. So right now, what we're showing is, I don't think I have that sheet on here. We're showing a sidewalk along the water, along Upper Porter's Pond to the intersection. And, this drawing's a little bit old, but we are showing a crosswalk that goes across into the landscaped area that's maintained by the garden club. And then we're going to have another, and it's going to bring you to the shared use path that goes up the road. So you're going to be, like I said, as you're going into the park from Oak Street, the shared use path is along Upper Porter's Pond until we get to this area here, and then there's going to be a crosswalk to get you over to the other side.
Hmm. Okay, great. Another question from Lynn. During the parkway projects, I'm assuming you mean during the construction of the parkway, is it necessary to block the traffic and for how long?
So we need to work on that. We need to work on, once we get to the point where we have construction drawings, we're ready to build, and we have a contractor, we can talk with them about what the construction looks like. So obviously it's a very big project. I'm speculating, I don't know this 100%, but my feeling is that this will probably be done in phases so that the entire park is not closed. Possibly do north of South Street first, or this part of the park first, and then, keep everything north of South Street open. And then as you work on South Street, open this area, or vice versa. So it may also be a situation where you work on, you know, the Parkway East from this intersection up to South Street, close, you know, keep it, work on this stretch first, build it, and then move to the other side. We just have to work on, logistics for that, but that's a little bit down the road. I don't think anybody wants to close the entire park to build this.
Yeah, and just going back to that point of timeline, Tim and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the funding we applied for, if we got the next round, we probably wouldn't be in contract with them again until probably October. So we probably wouldn't be looking at getting construction ready funds until the following summer.
I think at the soonest, you're correct.
Okay.
And as Scott mentioned, it probably would be because the way I anticipate funding coming in, it would probably be a phased construction. I think a relatively conservative number, or just say from Oak Street to South Street, is probably somewhere in the tens of millions of dollars. So it would probably be a phased project. So sections may be closed, for that construction period.
And another question from Patricia. The right-hand gravel, what will the size of stone be?
Probably going to be stone dust. So we're not looking at, I don't think anybody wants to put, 3/4 inch stone or pea stone or anything like that down where kids can pick up the stone and throw it or dig it up or kick it around. Um, it's just a way to provide a little bit of width along the vehicular way in case there is an accident, in case you need to get an emergency vehicle through there. Just provide a little bit of additional width for vehicles to get by. That's the only reason it's there.
Any more questions in the chat, or anybody want to raise their hand if you have an additional question?
Alrighty. That's all for the chat. Not seeing anyone else typing.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, so I guess the wrong slide number. Hang on. Scott's going to provide a quick overview of MEPA, why we have a MEPA process for this project, and this is the anticipated timeline for it.
So, as I described before, MEPA is really a planning level exercise. MEPA stands for the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act. It's been in existence as long as I've been working, and I've been working for over 30 years. So it's been around for a while. Basically, it is a way for state agencies to provide feedback on projects of certain size that either require state funding or receive state funding or require state permits. And so this project, because of the size, definitely triggers MEPA review. So what we do is we put together a document called in this case, we're doing what's called an expanded environmental notification form, which describes the impacts of the project. As part of this, we'll have the master plan submitted. We will have a stormwater report that's done. We will have the plans, and the plans will probably be somewhere right now. I think there's somewhere around 85 sheets because of the size of the project. So it's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of study and a lot of plans and backup documentation. We plan on submitting that application before June 15th. And then what happens is that the all projects that are submitted between, say, May 31st, the end of May, and June 15th get published in what's called an environmental monitor. The environmental monitor is basically it's like a newsletter that talks about projects that are undergoing MEPA review. And that is a notification to all the state agencies, but also the general public about the project. That's when you'll be able to view the environmental notification form. The plans that we're working on now will be submitted, and it gives you the opportunity to provide comments. What also happens is that we receive comments from all the different state agencies. So, for instance, we will receive comments from MassDOT. We will receive comments from folks who are concerned about energy. We will receive comments from DEP. Sometimes those comments are extensive. Sometimes those comments are just, we've reviewed the project and, we have no comments. We will have a consultation session, which is generally, sometimes it's on site, sometimes it's online, and anybody can attend that. And then comments can be provided to the MEPA office, both written and online. When this is published in the environmental monitor, that will provide the link to online comments. And I believe that's when they talk about when the scoping session will be, or the consultation session. This project will require another filing. So basically what will happen is at the end of that process, we will get a certificate or certificate on the environmental notification form that says you need to provide further documentation in these areas. At that time, and assuming that we get funding for round 2, we will do more study in the areas that they believe require more study. Given the nature of the project, and these are my favorite types of projects, because everything that we're doing here is to make things better. It's not like we're building a data center where we're knocking down acres and acres of trees and producing building a building that will use lots of energy and lots of power. Everything about this project is to make the park safer, more usable, more sustainable, more environmentally friendly. So we're hopeful that we don't have too many comments, that everybody kind of agrees with us that this is a great project and will help to make the park a better place to be. But you never know what you're going to get. So in addition to all the outreach that Rhiannon and Rachel have done so far, this is just another opportunity to provide comments, and those will go directly to the MEPA office, and they will read them. They will include them in their certificate and perhaps amplify them or make comments if they feel like the concerns or the comments they get are valid. They may make us do more study in some areas. But feel free to say, I love the project. I think this is a great project, and we can love to see it go forward. That's also helpful too.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this process or any other last minute questions?
Scott, Rick was suggesting that you might discuss the triggers for the MIPA review.
Right. So honestly, we only have one trigger, and the trigger is land clearing.
Mm.
So the the um, the threshold for a project, if you clear 25 acres of land, then you have to, that is one of the thresholds for filing with MIPA. If you, um, you know, if you get uh, state funding or require a state permit. And so, and to be honest with you, we're not that far over the 25 acres. And I think we're, it kind of moves around a little bit as we design it. Sometimes we need a little less area. Sometimes we think we need a little bit more. And that's really the only one. We're not adding a whole lot of impervious surface. We're only adding like, I think it's around an acre, maybe. Um, so we're hopeful that, they understand that the impacts are all positive, um, and we will, hopefully we're hoping to get a good review.
God, I suppose if this Avon project on South Street and the Parkway East gets moving, I wonder if that would need to be part of the MIPA process or if it might escape those triggers. Something to think about for us down the road, perhaps.
So that's a good point. So one of the things that, as part of the MIPA process, is if you're what they want to what they don't want to do is, if you have a big project, they don't want you to chop it up into 3 or 4 smaller ones so that you don't hit any of the triggers. If you do that, they call that segmentation, and honestly, they kind of hate that. What we have talked to them about, because of the nature, we had what we call a pre-filing meeting, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, and we talked to them about, the unique nature of this project, where the project is, um, we have a lot of projects identified, and it's all contingent on funding. We couldn't go with all the projects that Rachel talked about at the beginning of the presentation, because we don't have funding to design any of those. So what the agreement was that if something changes on the project and we have to add, say we get funding for that intersection, or we get funding for, the Waldo Lake observation area, that we will go back to them and we'll talk to the MIPA office. And if they feel that those thresholds require what's called a notice of project change, then we will file that. And so what that does is that provides another opportunity for additional comment.
We have one comment and one question in the chat. From Patrick, comment, I believe everyone agrees this is a great project. Patrick. And from Patricia, wants to know, has the study looked at the native wildlife disruption and how will they be impacted?
So one of the things that we do, there are tools online that talk about all kinds of things. You can look at things like, um, if there are any endangered species, which there aren't in this area. There is one area of the project where there is what's called a certified vernal pool. And so that's a wetlands pocket that is on the West Parkway, south of South Street. And so we are working into the design, mitigation to protect the certified vernal pool. We know, based on, the online tools, we don't think that there are any endangered species that are out there, but they will, Mass Natural Heritage will review the project, and if they disagree, then they will make comments, and we will have to, mitigate any disruption. The project is designed to substantially be in areas that are disturbed. So, um, we understand it's a park, and so we don't want to change the width of the road and knock down thousands of trees. We are going to have to knock down some trees because the road is getting wider, but we are working to minimize that as best we can. There are going to be a couple small areas where there are wetlands fill, and so we will mitigate for that as well. So we are definitely, considering, um, native species and in a number of different ways.
When we get to the
Scott,
point of construction too, I was just going to say that limiting traffic in any way we can will have just as much of a positive impact on wildlife as we might see disruption with construction, and the improvement of water quality will be substantial.
Scott, I'll just add that one of the comments that came up during the park day, the Give a Hoot, had to do with turtle migration across the street at the northeast end of the park. And I'll share the comments with you in the future, but they had to do with possibly modifying the shape of the curb to help that migration a little bit.
Okay, well, this is the first I'm hearing of it, so I can talk about it.
All right, great. One more comment in the chat. An idea from Lynn to have signage on South Street at the intersections with DW Field Parkway to warn drivers about the parkway crossing to slow down. So that's this chat, and this is being recorded, and the chat will be saved. So all of these comments will be saved for future reference as well. So thanks for those, and thank you everybody for your questions. So the next steps, we had an in-person public meeting. This is our virtual public meeting. Scott talked about the MIPA process. We're going to be wrapping up this part of the grant phase by June 30th. So my best suggestion for all of you is to go on our website and sign up for our email list. You maybe already all are signed up for our email list. Maybe that's why you're here tonight. But maybe you heard about it somewhere else. So we send out emails whenever we have things going on. So as soon as the MIPA process goes live and that is available for people to look at and comment, I will email and I will include links on the website. So we're always kind of updating things. So that's definitely our best resource. DWFPI.org. That QR code will take you to it there. There's a contact form on the website. There is also an email address, dwfpi@wildlandstrust.org. All of that comes straight to us, and all of those comments and everything that we've received from all these public meetings is being saved and being brought to the attention of Weston O'Neill and all of the project partners, and is being filed just like all the public comments that we've received throughout the planning process since 2022. So we really appreciate everybody's participation, and we hope that you continue to participate.
Thank you all so much. Like Rachel said, she monitors that email and can spread questions and get the right answers if you have any after this. We will work on getting this presentation also uploaded to the website. So if you have friends that are interested in the park who want to learn more, this will be available to them as well. And thank you also to everybody who presented tonight. And thank you all for joining us.
All right, thank you, and thank you OCPC and Rhiannon for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Right.